Welcome to the Dawg on It Trucking Podcast. Who's on this week's show? Mr. Warkentin from FleetMetrica. Ward has a gift that he is able to take big data and put it in a format that management can make sense of it. What are we talking about, big data? Well, you've got all this data coming from your ECMs, your ECMs, your ELDs, your GPS systems, and other stuff, and Ward's able to put it into a format that management can use it. So without making it wait any longer, let's get into it with Mr. Ward Warkentin of FleetMetrica. Welcome to the Dawg on It Trucking Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Harris, Safety Dog, and when it comes to trucking safety, the dog is on it. What are you getting when you listen or watch this podcast? I am so privileged to be able to sit and discuss with a variety of trucking influencers a wide range of trucking topics. And you get to hear their perspective on an enormous range of issues. Please, if you would show your appreciation for the podcast by leaving a thumbs up, a comment, a rating, depending on the platform of your choice that you're listening or watching with. It would help me so much raise the profile of this show and bring it and make it available to even more listeners. So thank you very much. I appreciate you and your time that takes. Now, let's go.
Well, thank you for attending that. It was well attended, and I think people walked away with what they were looking for.
I think they walked away with some actionable content, which I hope was the goal.
Yeah, I mean, the workshop, it was a scorecard workshop, and the intent was to help fleets take a first step towards scorecards. I'm hearing a lot from trucking companies that want to do something with scorecards, but really aren't sure how to get started. And that was really the intent of the workshop. And really fortunate to have one of our customers, CPC Logistics, Matt Carr from CPC, participate in that to share some of his real life experiences and in implementing a scorecard and getting results from it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you had, and there I hit the wrong thing there. But you had several customers there. But as you say, Matt was able to, he's implemented everything, and he was able to share some of the, I don't want to say challenges, but he was able to answer a lot of the questions from your other customers. Absolutely.
I mean, it's great to hear someone that's already gone down that path and was successful with it. And that experience is, I think, really valuable in a workshop like this.
Yeah. And can you tell me what FleetMetrica does?
Well, FleetMetrica is a data analytics company for the trucking industry. Basically, Chris, we make sense of your data so you don't have to.
Sorry, that was my girlfriend just dropping off a parcel to me as we're taping here live.
Okay. Yeah, so we basically make sense of data so you don't have to. And the way we do that is we offer simple solutions like driver scorecards and management dashboards to do that.
Well, management dashboards, before we get into all that, tell me about this book that I found, Shifting Gears.
Yeah, I'm co-author of the book Shifting Gears. It's a primer for management on best management practices, and it's interesting you're bringing this up because one of the practices mentioned in the book is the focus of FleetMetrica, and that's around measurement and the value fleets can get from formalizing measurement in their organization through scorecards.
So, measurement, FleetMetrica. Tell me, how did you get involved in the trucking industry? You don't sound like you're a trucker.
Well, you probably got involved differently than other folks as a management consultant. My formal education is in the area of data analytics and statistics, and I started out helping trucking companies implement formal quality management systems like ISO 9000 and TQM. And over that time, I watched the evolution of telematics devices move from the satellites to the ELDs, and I also saw how many companies struggle to leverage or benefit more from all this data. And so that continued to keep me engaged in the industry because I felt that I could bring some value to the industry by helping them make sense of this data. Our vision, or my vision, 10 years ago was to make it as easy as looking at a thermometer on the wall to see how you were performing, and that's been our driving vision all along. Scorecards, to an extent, can help in that regard in terms of engaging drivers and continuing to communicate with them and how they're doing and how they're performing, and so I think that this is going to be an interesting time for the industry.
Going back to the workshop that we had, do you think you got the results that you wanted from that workshop?
Well, I can tell you that the folks that did attend all said that they see what the path forward for them looks like, and so that was helpful. And we also had risk consultants like yourself, other risk consultants present, and they saw an opportunity to bring more value to their customers introducing scorecards. So overall, absolutely, I think that it's providing awareness to the trucking community, which is what the intent was.
Right, and I mean, as I say, I learned a lot, and you're right. I see ways to bring it to my customers that would be of huge value. Now, what do you think is driving it? Like, why should a trucking company look at scorecards? What's the benefit to them? I'll leave it at that. What's the benefit to a trucking company?
Well, what's driving it? Scorecards have been around for a while, Chris. What's new, though, is it's a lot easier to implement a scorecard in an organization, and it's primarily because of technology. I mean, there's a number of trends going on in the market that's making it easy to implement scorecards, which companies already are benefiting from. For one, we have the telematics or the ELD regulation that's forcing companies to stick devices in their trucks to collect all of this data. So it's making it easy and readable, the data. The other technology that's important here is the widespread use of smartphones by drivers. You could make this information available in an app. And so that's been helpful. And the third technology is AI. What's now possible to predict when there is change in performance and alert drivers or managers to take appropriate action. And so all of those things have kind of come together recently to make it possible to benefit more from scorecards in terms of more real-time feedback to drivers, which really enhances that tool.
You mentioned AI and alerts to managers. Can you give an example of how that might work or look?
Well, let's take an example of an organization focusing on speeding. The individual drivers may get ongoing feedback on their performance to alert them when they're trending the wrong way or improving. And if someone is showing considerable improvement in their performance, if that feedback is also provided to management, there's an opportunity for management to engage with a driver and encourage them to continue on the path they're going and continue improving their performance. So there's just a huge opportunity for more driver and manager engagement than there has been in the past.
Well, that would be driver management engagement. Are you suggesting that drivers and managers and dispatchers might talk to each other instead of use the? Well, I've been in dispatch offices recently, and it's pretty quiet now. Everybody's typing away on their keyboard. There's not a lot of interaction with drivers. I don't think that helps driver retention. How might a scorecard, for instance, help in driver retention?
Well, drivers typically hear from people in the company when something isn't going well, when they're asked to change their behavior or whatever, where there's an opportunity to give feedback. It doesn't have to be directly by the phone. It could be through an app that lets drivers know, hey, you're trending better than what you have been in the past, or you're doing great this week. And that can all be automated, Chris. And so now messages can be provided from different people in the organization back to the driver. So it doesn't have to be over the phone. It could be through an app or some other means of sending that information to drivers. And when you talk about retention, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do to increase retention. Just engagement alone goes a long way. Drivers like to know how they're performing. Everyone wants to know how they're performing, and that's a known factor for losing people in an organization. And so you're providing timely feedback on how people are performing. That goes a long way in terms of driver satisfaction. There's smaller things you can do, such as send automated messages if you've got a new driver starting up. Hey, congratulations, you've been with us for a whole week or a whole month. Hope that things are going well. If not, send us a message back. So it's a tool that I think that creates an opportunity to engage and retain drivers in a much richer way than companies have in the past.
Well, and that, I'm sure you're aware that in the trucking industry, driver retention is a huge topic. The driver shortage. Some of us don't believe there is a driver shortage. Others believe that there is a huge driver shortage. I certainly see a driver shortage in the future for sure, because I'm one of the ones. I really am not sure that there's a driver shortage, and the only reason I say that is freight rates aren't where they need to be. If there's truly a driver shortage, freight rates would be much healthier for the trucking company. But what would the driver scorecard, would that help in driver retention? Like you mentioned, automated feedback. That's important, but I would really like it if somebody was to pick up the phone every now and again, and maybe it's the top 5 guys in your scorecard. If the safety department or the president was to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, hi, how are you?" Do you have any customers that might be doing something like that?
Yeah, I think all customers are doing different things. The thing that's most important, I believe, is that you're not just reaching out to 1 or 2 drivers, but you're reaching out to everyone, and that's the opportunity a scorecard really provides. I mean, this is an excellent opportunity for drivers to showcase their exemplary skills and be compensated for it. And so, what a number of customers are doing is actually building in a bonus for that great performance. And when you're starting to provide the benefit back to the drivers in terms of a monetary benefit, they're sharing in the success of the company, and that also helps drive retention within an organization when they know that the good job that they're doing is they're benefiting directly from it.
Well, and a friend of ours, Kim Richardson, always calls truck drivers profit center managers. So I think if using a scorecard as a tool, you could make them more compensated on being a profit center manager. I think that's a great expression.
I do too, and I've heard it before. It's not just information from the driver; it's information on the truck. It's information from transportation management software. All that information can go in to look at a truck, an individual truck, as a profit center, and scorecards can harness all that information, both for drivers and managers, to manage their truck or their fleet effectively.
Yeah, and scorecards can be used in a number of different ways, but how do drivers perceive the scorecard?
Well, they're one of the, I think, again, one of the groups that benefits the most from scorecards, because they can see how they're doing and get feedback to change that to potentially get a better bonus if it's focused on a bonus system. But just the opportunity of being involved and engaged in the organization and being able to take pride in what they're doing is I think is meaningful to drivers. So there's and I think that over time companies are going to find other ways that this is going to benefit drivers. But for the most part, I think looking as you build your program, look at ways that you can involve drivers and help them benefit more from this technology.
Well, you just said there, as you build your program. So is this a cookie cutter approach that to build a scorecard, or is it individual for each individual company?
Well, it depends how you approach this, but a scorecard, first of all, is a tool. It's not a solution, Chris. And if your intent is just to take a scorecard and slap it on and give it to the driver and expect results, then I think you're not going to be happy with the results you get. It's more important to look at a scorecard as part of what you do as an organization and tie it into your company's current policies and training and how organization intervenes with drivers, and so it's important that scorecards are thought of as a program and not necessarily an individual scorecard itself. That is helpful.
Well, it's a program, but it's also another tool that the individual companies can use.
Yeah, and so if you're looking at it as first of all as a program, and you're using it towards an objective to improve safety or improve productivity, then there's a lot of things you can do with your scorecard to drive those kind of results, as we already discussed with driver retention, and so it's important to look at the scorecard not on its own, but as part of what you do as an organization and the goals of the organization to really get to the full benefit of a scorecard.
Right. Now, so there's scorecards out there, and FleetMetrica obviously has competitors, and one of the competitors would be the ELD providers. Now, don't most of the ELD providers already have a scorecard?
Yeah, tough question, Chris. Yes, they do.
You didn't come on here to get the easy ones, did you?
Most ELD suppliers that I'm aware of offer some basic driver scorecards. What we're doing is complementing what ELD providers offer today with more value-added service, primarily around helping companies implement a scorecard program, not so much the scorecard itself. And the way we do that is by automating the analysis of the data for fleets so that they don't have to hire additional staff or resources to make sense of that and make it available or determining when to follow up for drivers. And we're able to do that. We actually have a patented algorithm that enables us to bring this additional value to the table. And ELD providers really appreciate that, because now it's helping leverage the information that the providers are collecting on behalf of the fleets and keeping them as customers as well. Another area we bring value is we actually customize the solution to individual fleets. So we build it around your specific needs. And I think it's hard for an ELD provider to reach out to hundreds or even thousands of customers to provide that level of customization. And so those are the areas that we've really bringing more to the table than what you typically see with what companies receive from a telematics supplier.
Well, and I mean, I was at the workshop as we talked about, and one of the things that I saw, and because I'm able to see several different ELD providers and the information that it does give to management, I saw the simplicity of your solution, and it would be just so much easier to implement. And because it's automated a lot of the things in giving the driver feedback, that's something that I haven't seen on the ELD provider really yet, where they automatically give weekly or monthly feedback, whatever time frame you want. But I haven't seen that on their side yet. Do they have it?
Well, there's everyone's improving, including ELD suppliers, and their challenge is continuing to deal with more data and integrating more devices into their system, and I think that fleets really expect them to provide the leadership and strength on the hardware side and what we're doing is working with individual customers who are using different technology and helping them build beyond whatever level they currently receive from their supplier. So we are what's called a value-added supplier to solutions, value-added solution provider to ELDs.
And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that can be done with ELDs. There's a tremendous amount of information available to the trucking companies today, and when trucking companies don't use that information, they can get themselves in trouble in court situations. And I'm thinking specifically of speeding. If they don't curb drivers' bad habits, and that information's available to them, it's also available to the courts. So, yep.
No, what was your question?
Well, there wasn't a question yet. I was just about to say, though, that, you know, if I'm a trucking company and I want to implement a scorecard system, do you have some tips or maybe tricks for me to implement a scorecarding system, whether it's yours or ELD providers?
Yeah, I thought there was maybe a question following regarding the court system and being exposed by collecting this data.
If you want to address it, go ahead.
Well, I want to say that not having any system is not a great way to operate if your focus, especially, is safety, and a lack of systems is a good example of an organization not stepping up to the plate. And so what can an organization do? And I think it's really the answer your recent question is they can implement a scorecard program, and through that they can drive results and decide what follow-up needs to occur in the organization, and provided they are doing that, then there shouldn't be any challenge, or should be much less challenged by someone if they do run amok or into an issue that lands them in court.
Well, unfortunately, trucking companies run amok because trucks are still driven by human beings, and so that's what's going to happen from time to time, unfortunately. But let's say I wanted to implement a scorecard system now. Do you have any suggestions on best practices, perhaps, for that?
I seem to be sure I do. I seem to be coming back to kind of a common theme here, which is implement a program around scorecards. Just don't roll out scorecards and give it to drivers. And I think that's probably the most important tip I can share to your audience, Chris, is that treat it like any new program in your organization, and set objectives around what you want to achieve from this, and make sure that there's training and so when you look at it from the point of view of a program, you do consider a lot of issues that are important in implementing a scorecard. Things like, are policies defined? Are people, and how does the scorecard tie and support those policies? Or what training is in place? And does that training include people who are going to use or access the scorecard? And does the training also include the intervention and follow-up when things aren't moving in the right direction? Thinking about recognition and rewards and getting into gamification. These are just examples of things that you might consider in a scorecard program. And so first and foremost, start off with a program, not just a scorecard. And the second tip I guess I'd follow up with is, as you look at all those different considerations in a scorecard program, also look at ways you can engage the drivers and managers in that program, so that it's not just, okay, here's our policy, but what is going to encourage them, for example, to go to their app on their phone. For example, you might use something like a campaign to reward drivers the first month or a couple months you roll this out, to encourage them to create a new habit around going to that. So so those would be, I think the top things to keep in mind: program and driver and manager engagement.
You mentioned gamification.
Yes.
What a word. But
A new word.
well, with the young generation, younger than I anyways, they've grown up with cell phones in their hands, games everywhere they go. They've grown up with YouTube. How does a scorecard, is it possible to gamify a scorecard?
Well, you're focusing on kind of the younger generation, but it benefits everyone. What was that app that was really popular recently? Birds. Crazy Birds, Go Birds, something or other, right?
Right.
Unfortunately, what was interesting, it was very successful because, and this was described in the book, which I would recommend your audience look at, called Hooked, and it offered tips to encourage people to basically get hooked on whatever technology you're trying to roll out or develop. But Angry Birds, that was the name of the game. Why people ended up going to that, and it was everyone. It wasn't just kids. It was adults. It was everybody. The reason they were hooked on it was because they wanted to do it, not because someone said that they had to do it. And so, again, coming back to engagement, do something that in gamification encourages drivers and managers to go in and regularly review how they're doing, so that it's not something that we're being forced to do, but it's an inducement or an enhancement or an enticement.
Right. And I think gamification, we're trying to make it a little bit more fun for everybody. Now, what are the biggest challenges do you think that fleets have in either gamifying or introducing a scorecard?
Well, that's a good question. At the workshop, we actually had an exercise around that, as you know, and some of the major challenges that were listed there, I'll give you the top three. One was actually setting up a scorecard and the process involved in doing that. Thankfully, the technology is where it is today, where it's possible for third-party providers like ourselves are able to make it really easy for trucking companies to implement scorecards. So that challenge has been, and the workshop itself walked companies through what would be involved in setting up a scorecard and a scorecard program. The other challenge was the management buy-in. It's true for most projects or programs, but that's easy to overcome once management is aware of how easy it is to actually set up a scorecard and to actually get results from using a scorecard. And this is why we see companies that implement scorecards see significant reductions in accidents or increases in productivity or increase in driver retention. It's because of the effectiveness this tool has on performance. And of course, when management sees that it's actually less expensive to have an online system to then employ resources in an organization to do this, then it's almost a no-brainer to introduce scorecards in the organization. So that second challenge, management buy-in, was a big one. The third challenge that was raised, and it was a number of issues at the workshop, was implementation. That's a big challenge for fleets, and I think that's where fleets will struggle the most, is how they implement this. And again, that's coming back to the theme I've been raising during these questions, and that is, if you have a program in place and you take a program approach, then the implementation process is going to take all those issues into consideration and make it possible. During that process, we obviously have a decade of experience helping fleets, so we're certainly able to help people handle around barriers or issues that they may have with implementing. But all of those challenges can be overcome.
And you were talking a little bit, and you made me think of a question, and you alluded to the answer, but you didn't come out and directly say. So the question is around ROI. I mean, for management, they always want a return on their investment. And do
Right.
scorecards give a return on investment.
Yeah, as I said, there's earlier that there's benefits to both the organization and to the drivers themselves in terms of benefits, and you can quantify those. And it depends on how you use scorecards in your organization. So if you're dealing with high turnover and your intent is to use scorecards to help drive turnover down, then and it's successful in doing that, then that's how I would define it. But typically, if companies are focusing on safety and fuel, we see at least $2,000 to $4,000 per truck per year in savings, and these are hard savings. It's typically associated with fewer fines, fewer unscheduled repairs, better MPGs as a result of driving safer. So those are some examples of how tangibly you'll see that, and so the return is typically or can easily be within months. This isn't a 1-year investment. I mean, you're not making an investment in new technology. You're already paying for data that's there, and organizations like ourselves, there is little to no setup fee involved, and you pay as you go. So there isn't any investment in organizations necessarily making in a scorecard program.
Well, and I mean, you're talking to a safety guy, and I equate a savings in miles per gallon to being a safer driver, because in my mind, you're doing things and getting better miles per gallon, then you're probably not tailgating, you're not on the brakes frequently, you're doing all the different things correctly, you're leaving huge distances so you can drive better and safer. So to me, there's a direct correlation between safety and fuel economy, and a scorecard like yours, I'm thinking, would highlight that and provide almost an immediate ROI.
Absolutely, and companies actually like to begin with those areas because of the immediate payback and the low-hanging fruit opportunity that it provides. Some organizations have decided to focus on one metric, whether it's speeding or idling, and then progress to more metrics. And so when you are looking at a scorecard, look at those low-hanging fruit opportunities, and your strategy may be to choose those that will give you a quicker return on investment.
Right. Well, Ward, to be respectful of your time, I want to wrap this up, but can you give, I got 2 last questions, I guess.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I mean, the easier one would be let me just look here. How would a trucking company get started? And then the second question is, how do they get in touch with Ward? Do you have, your LinkedIn profile? What do you have out there to reach out? So 2 questions. How would they get started? And then how do we get in touch with you?
I think LinkedIn works for me for sure to connect with me. That's probably the easiest way. In terms of getting started, pardon?
I'll put that in the show notes below, your LinkedIn link.
Excellent. In terms of getting started, I mean, you can go to our website at FleetMetrica.com and just request a demo, and I would be delighted to walk you through what's involved in a scorecard program, what it looks like. In fact, if you have a slide, I did send you some slides earlier. It'd be great to just actually show you an example of what a scorecard looks like.
I just put it up.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so basically the scorecard. This is a typical starting point we have with customers that are looking at scorecards, and you'll notice there's 3 different sections. The top lists the achievements that a driver is earning throughout the year, and that could be updated every week. And the next section, the middle section, includes a bonus that the driver is earning that quarter, and this is updated every day or weekly. And then at the bottom are panels or buckets, as some customers like to call them, of different metrics for those areas. And so if anything is trending the wrong way or not going the direction that they should, it would be highlighted in red as it is with the safety and fuel tabs. And so they could easily click down and see what's going on. And if they don't take action, then that's going to put their bonus in jeopardy. And so this is usually a starting point that we offer to customers when they are thinking about scorecards. And some companies prefer not to go down the route of bonuses, and which is fine. But a lot of times there's a discussion around how you're going to recognize and how drivers are going to benefit from improving their performance. What form of recognition are you going to use in your organization? So this is in addition to this sample scorecard, this could be distributed as an email to drivers instead of an app. It could be printed off as a PDF and enclosed with a driver's check. And some companies do all of the above and give drivers all the different opportunities to review how they're doing. And so I just wanted to give the audience an idea of what it could look like.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that they don't have to do a bonus, because I know for a lot of people, an honest and sincere thank you, you're doing a great job for us, goes
Absolutely
a long way, and I think in many cases is much more rewarding to the individual driver. So it doesn't have to be money is my point anyways.
Absolutely. I mean, if your focus on scorecards is to be a safer company, and you already have a strong safety culture, then there isn't so much an expectation built up to use a bonus system. It could be that they're recognized in other ways. The best driver in the fleet, whatever the organization's doing.
Yeah, that's great, Ward. And I want to thank you for coming on the show. I really. Myself, I believe in scorecards. It's another way that we can recognize drivers, both financially and just with a sincere thank you, as I said. So I really think that scorecarding and keeping track of individual drivers would go a long way to driver retention and driver satisfaction with the company. So I hope that some of the fleets would reach out to you. And of course, I will.
Thanks very much.
In the show notes, I'll put your contact info and the website so people can reach out to you. But it was my pleasure, Ward, to have you on the show.
Thanks for inviting me, Chris, and thank you again also for participating in our workshop. Look forward to hearing from audience members if they are interested in learning more.
Right. To the listeners, the show notes contains all contact information for Ward. And Ward, thank you so much again for coming on. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chris.
Hope you loved the show as much as I did. That was a great interview, and I thank you for hanging in there to the end. Please leave us a like, a thumbs up, a review, a comment, a rating if it is in your heart. Thank you so much, and I do really appreciate your time. And join us again next week for another exciting interview.